In a world where it seems totally normal to listen to a podcast about the Toronto Argonauts, it's the X's and Argos podcast.
Welcome to the X's and Argos post-game reaction podcast brought to you by Funny Bone Broth. The Argos fall 30-16 to the Saskatchewan Roughriders, and JB just getting out of the press conferences now. It is almost daybreak. So we may have to expedite this one a little bit. But what was your overall impressions of the game? How do you feel about that one?
Well, these late night pods were a lot easier in the summer than they are now. Terrible game. I thought the score, I mean, they had a chance to be right there at the end of the game. It didn't feel that way watching the game. I thought it was a regression game. They looked undisciplined again. The tackling was an issue again. They looked like a middle of the pack team. So, and that's probably who they are. They're probably 8-6 team, and I think that's what they're going to be. I thought maybe they had the chance to be something more than that, but I don't think so. I think they have all the attributes of a team that that wins as many as it loses. Is some weeks they're good and some weeks they're not.
Well, it seems like it's a rotating thing. It's been win-loss, win-loss. Well, the wins look great, and you see so much promise. You say, okay, well, finally they're starting to get it together, and then they follow it up with this loss that looked like the game they played 2 games ago, where you're like, whoa, what went wrong here? And all the same things that we're talking about today, the missed tackles, the mental mistakes, that was Labor Day. That was the first game in Winnipeg. And we noticed that these games have come on the road. Now, with the exception of that opener in Calgary, but every other road game this team has played has looked like this, whereas they haven't looked like this at home.
No, that is, I think that's an unfortunate trend. I don't think it's unusual, but I agree with you. They're that the team looks like they're just not ready to play on the road the same way they are at home, and I think that also speaks to a team that's not quite there. I mean, look, 2 years ago they were as bad as Ottawa, and look at Ottawa. So I think that these are sort of first world problems. This is a competitive team that can go punch for punch with anybody in the league, which was not the case 2 years ago. But there, I think there are still areas that they need to address.
The other positive that I'll take out of this is that I'm long term, I'm not worried about the defense. The defense has kept them in almost every game this season, and they've generally played really well. It's been the offense that sometimes has shown no signs of life whatsoever. And today, I thought Nick Arbuckle played his best game as an Argonaut. And I think that sort of gets lost in all of the unfortunate things that were going on. It just seemed like there was so much bad luck today, from injuries to just disappointing momentum swings. Nick Arbuckle played really well. And I think that that's an important takeaway here, because it's a tough place to play. They're playing against a good team. And he was by far the best Toronto Argonaut tonight.
Yeah, he did play well. He threw for over 300. He opened up with a lot of deep passes, which we had been, really kind of hoping for. Couple of missed connections, but that bomb to Rogers was fantastic. I thought he played. I didn't think he played as well as you thought he did. I thought he played pretty good. I thought that he was not the problem tonight. He still fumbles the ball. I'd like to see him not do that anymore. But he looked like a CFL quarterback tonight. So that was a positive to take. That he didn't look overmatched or overwhelmed.
I found that he used his feet really well in the pocket, and I felt like every time he scrambled, something positive happened downfield. And it's funny because 2 days ago at practice, Wednesday's practice, they spent time exclusively working on scramble drills. And then here he was today, suddenly in all these situations where he's scrambling out to his left, scrambling to his right. And that's where the big plays happen. And then a few that could have been big plays that were just missed. And that's an area of his game that we really haven't seen too much. He hasn't really taken advantage of that. There were a few times early in the season where he left the pocket and ran, or left the pocket and then horrible things happened. But yeah, we didn't see that today. And so I thought that that was some evolution in his game as well, and something I'll take away. And like you said, those deep balls, he went against, we were talking about that sort of distribution chart, the spray chart that Marshall Ferguson put out earlier in the week. And it just showed so many of his passes going short right. And he bucked that trend today. You know, there were a few, and there were a lot of RPOs in there, like there have been, but he took shots downfield and he completed passes downfield.
Yeah, it's really one of those like could have games, because if he connects on those deep corners, they win the game. And I'm raving about Arbuckle, showing off the arm and the passing, the pass attack of the Argos, and it was just inches on those passes. So if they can get that timing down with those receivers on those corners, which maybe they haven't had a ton of time to run because they've been working on the underneath game, that's my takeaway, is if we can get the timing down on those deep corners, and kind of punish teams for sitting on the underneath, then that's a positive step, once we fix the other stuff.
There were 3 deep balls. Two were corners, and one was sort of a diagonal on a very slow developing play with a fake reverse in there and everything else. And all 3 of them just missed. One was because I think it was Nick Arbuckle who lost his guy, and Arbuckle had his arm hit as he was trying to hit Ricky Collins Jr. on a corner run. He was just wide open. He would have made one move and then dashed into the end zone. But Arbuckle gets his arm hit. As he releases it, it flies into the air, and it fell incomplete. The other one went off Devaris Daniels' hands. That was another touchdown waiting to happen, and it just, maybe an inch too far, maybe, but that's a catch Daniels had to make. And then the diagonal route, the deep route on that fake reverse to Worthy, to Rogers, that just looked like, again, it was like an inch off. That one was that one I think was a little bit of a miss maybe for Arbuckle, but on a route like that, to miss by 2 inches is just so close to being huge plays, every single one of these.
Yeah, they didn't show the replay on the Collins Jr. I was disappointed on that one. I know his arm got hit, so he wasn't able to follow through on it, but geez, you'd like to have that catch.
So what happened on that play? Riders were running cover 3, and one of either the corner or the halfback made a mistake, because basically the corner was running cover 3 cut and the halfback was running cover 3 hold, so they both had the flats, which obviously that's a mistake. And so all that was left back there was the free. And that would have been, it's such an easy move for Ricky Collins Jr. to make, because the free is coming, flying over to the sideline. He just has to step inside, and there's just no one left. He's gone. But unfortunately, the ball popped up in the air, and Collins Jr., I don't think he read it off of Arbuckle's hand right away, because it wasn't supposed to go where it went. And by the time he adjusted, it was too late, and he basically trapped it. Why don't we go through the quick sort of game summary here? Start of the game was weird from the beginning. I noticed on the opening kickoff, I saw Jeff Richards wearing the wrong socks. The team was wearing their light blue socks today, but Jeff Richards on the opening kick, I'm like, this guy's wearing white socks. It just seems like a weird thing, because it's an obvious uniform violation. And then by the time the defense lined up, I noticed it wasn't just Jeff Richards. It was, in fact, every single defensive back. What do you make of this statement that they were making?
Yeah, I mean, I'll take the more positive route, which is, just a shout out to their coach, who was forced to be suspended because of vaccination, and just a shout out to the coach that they remembered him as opposed to a protest. But it certainly looked like they were protesting by not tackling for stretches of the game. That was, I mean, Fajardo only threw for 212. This is still a terrific secondary. But there are definitely moments where the tackling is, if they could just add in the tackling, they'd be an elite unit. It's just really frustrating sometimes, especially that opening drive. I mean, it was just brutal to be honest, in terms of wrap up tackling. It was just really, really poor. And then they dialed it in until late in the game. So I took it to be not a protest per se, but just a way of kind of shouting out coach. I hope that's what it was. I can't imagine that the coaching staff had not sort of at least somewhat approved those guys going on the field with that. Hopefully that's not going to be an internal dissension thing, which we talked about as a potential problem, especially heading into this game.
It was definitely the worst tackling of the year. There have been some, like, that has been an issue before. We've talked about that in all the losses, that the tackling, hasn't been great because but it's usually because they're going for those like big knockout hits. And that wasn't what it was today. It wasn't like guys were coming flying in and missing tackles. This was different. Guys were just trying to wrap and letting the ball carriers slip out of their grasp. So it's not the same kind of missed tackles. And that kind of concerned me, especially on that opening drive. I wondered if they just weren't really dialed in and ready to play this game. It's been a weird week for the defense. They lose their coordinator. The DBs lose their positional coach. It's a strange week. And, it's a, very different time of night. We're playing a super late game. Everything about it was different. And they acted like it in the opening drive. Saskatchewan moved steadily down the field. Fajardo ended up with a QB sneak for the touchdown, but it was just every play was just a series of missed tackles. And then there was a chance for the Argos to come back. They get the ball back. We have a really nice end around from Chandler Worthy, who, it was great to see him in the game too with all that speed. And then John White breaks this great run and then fumbles the football, and Saskatchewan has it back again, and all the wind is out of the sails.
Yeah, it was a kind of a perfect storm in the sense that we needed the team to come out. We talked about before the game that the first 10 minutes was going to be crucial. It's always crucial in a road game, but especially when a team like Saskatchewan, who's lost a couple of games and are looking to get back on track, you can't give a team like that hope, because then they start getting the old confidence back, much like the Labor Day game against Hamilton. And, for them to not come out crisp in that opening drive and to basically let Saskatchewan push us around down the field was just the absolute worst possible thing you could have had in that scenario. So that was, they definitely did tighten up and kept it a game. And really, we scored a touchdown there at the end, and it's a one possession game. I mean, it felt further apart than it ended up being. But yeah, it was disappointing to not, understandable, but disappointing to not see them come out and impose their will. And that's really what this defensive unit hasn't been able to do, I think, through injuries and now other circumstances. But they're so close to being elite. They've got the swagger and they've got the skill, but they don't have that kind of grit.
It's consistency, isn't it?
Yeah, they can't grab the game and choke the life out of it yet. They not yet. Where it's like the elite defensive teams don't have bad drives. They come out and they just take your will away, and it's not there yet. But I don't know if things can settle down. Guys get used to a new scenario. In the end, they played pretty well. They just got to clean up that tackling. That's really it. From a defensive backfield point of view.
I felt like at the end of the first quarter, there was a real chance there because, well, Saskatchewan had missed 2 field goals in the first quarter, which helped. And, it kind of made up for the white fumble and everything else that was going wrong. But at the very end of the first quarter, Arbuckle strung together 3 straight beautiful passes, all off RPOs, and each was the correct read. Hits the guy in stride, had really nice gains out of short passes. And then they hit a reverse to Worthy that went for like 26 yards or something like that. And they're down right on the doorstep. And they end up having to settle for a field goal. And this play, I know it was the only read that I saw Arbuckle make tonight that was the wrong read. And what the play was, it was DJ Foster leaking out into the flat. And Arbuckle went with him the entire way because he's been able to count on Foster so much that I think he just dismissed the rest of his reads. And his first read on that play, they sort of had a pick route running. And on that play, Brissett is going to cross underneath the 2 other receivers out of this sort of bunch formation. And he was standing wide open in the end zone right in front of Arbuckle. And that's got to be the primary on that. But he was staring down Foster the whole way. The linebackers were all over it. Obviously, they've been watching film on Foster, I'm sure, all week. And so they were all over Foster. It was a high throw. And it was just too bad if he just looked for that really easy pass underneath to Brissett. That was just an easy touchdown.
Red zone, the red zone in the first half buried them. Like that's a bad play call. It's just a bad play call. You can't throw that swing pass when you're 5 yards away from the end zone. There's no room for Foster to juke a guy out. It's bang bang, and I'm like, don't throw the ball if it's not into the end zone.
But that's not the play call though. That's on Arbuckle. Like the play is to go to,
or that's his read, right? But I mean, it's the wrong read, if not the wrong play.
For sure,
right?
For sure. No, he's got to read Brissett there.
If you're putting the ball in the air, it's got to go into the end zone. You can't throw a ball to a guy 3 yards away from the end zone. Of course, he's going to get wrapped up. Everybody's on top of each other down there, and that's no good. And then the second red zone, we've been texting. I wanted White to get the ball again, but not at his shotgun.
That play, and there's a lot of debate on this. So that was another, just absolutely drained the life out of the whole team, and the momentum went away again. They're second and goal from the 1 yard line. 2 attempts to get it in. The first one they try is the QB sneak, and they
that's not an Arbuckle strength.
It's not.
Maybe it's time to start looking at I don't know. Maybe Macbeth. He's a big dude. Maybe I don't know if that's his wheelhouse either. But maybe look at. I mean, a lot of teams do it. Bring in a guy look, he's a huge dude. If I were gonna choose, I'd much rather the 6'4" guy try and smash his way for a yard. But
I don't know what the answer is on that, but I don't feel like we have the assets that a lot of other teams have, where the second string quarterback happens to be this giant individual who's young and extremely strong and just kind of comes in and powers his way. Well, yeah, but he's not. I know, but you don't think of him as a QB sneak artist.
Well, maybe it's time. Anyways, that's an aside, but I have been thinking about that because it's not an Arbuckle thing, and it's a big and so many teams do it, so I think they should definitely consider it. Anyways, but what were you gonna say about the shotgun run?
I don't like that play call on the one. I think it's fine if that's an RPO. That's the only time it's fine, but I don't like an RPO out of pistol in that scenario. I think everything about it, and it was slow developing too. You had a slot back coming across to kick out the end, and it was just what is happening here? I thought for sure as that play was developing, I thought, oh, this is interesting. It's a pass, because I thought there's no way they're going to call a run with this much action.
It was so slow developing.
I know, from the 1 yard line.
I'm like, what? And then and then he ran into a team meeting. He never had a shot. There were 7 guys 2 yards deep.
Yeah, no, it's just such a again, a killer, because that's now 7 points from that drive that are gone. We've already lost the 7 from the Ricky Collins Jr. You lost the 7 from the dropped
You've got to be able
Daniels
to get that.
pass.
You've got to be able to get that quarterback sneak in. I mean, in the end, that's got to get in. They've got to find a way. I don't know whether you go wildcat with a fullback or something, but if in the CFL, if you're on the goal line, that's got to be a touchdown every time, in my opinion.
And I think it just has to be quarterback sneak. I think Arbuckle is better than Macbeth is in that scenario, and I think he's just got to be less cute with it. He likes to drift down the line to find a place. He often likes to run behind Bladek, but I think you just got to plow forwards, and you've got that yard in the CFL. You've got to be able to get that touchdown.
Got to.
And I don't even mind. I'm not against diving across. In that scenario, everyone's going low. Everyone's trying to
I would have gone.
Create a
I would have
up.
gone again. Like bam, we're like, okay, here we go. Second down, third down, QB sneak again. Like no
exactly.
need to talk about it. Just go again.
That's the play from the 1 yard line. That's the play. And
Right.
if you can't QB sneak in on 2 attempts, well, you don't deserve to. But
Right.
you didn't even give the team a chance with that. Reversing out into pistol, pulling a guy across. Like, oh my goodness. Anyway, so
It felt like Dinwiddie was talked into that play because he was dropping F-bombs.
Oh, he was so mad.
But I can't imagine that he was just mad at it not being blocked up properly, because it felt to me like he got talked into a play and he was like,
The only other thing I could see him being mad
at. I knew
at-
that play wouldn't work.
I didn't see it like that, but I thought he might have been mad at how slow developing it was. I feel like he might have wanted White to take that ball sooner, like to have less delay, less time between the snap of the ball and him making it to the mesh point. It just seemed like it took an eon for him to get to where Arbuckle was. So that's what I thought he was swearing about. But
I don't want to jump on stuff here, but like even him looking at the play call, like I feel like you should know going into a game, you should know your 1 yard plays. Like these are the 1 yard plays we're going to use. I wasn't crazy about looking at the menu and trying to choose which breakfast.
Yeah, I think your 1 yard plays and your 2-point conversion plays, you've got a box. Like usually that's like on my call sheet when I'm prepping for a game, I've got a box full of in order of effectiveness.
He looked like
my
he was,
short yardage plays and my 2-point conversion plays.
He looked like he was looking up a play, and I'm like, that's not great.
So into the half, what could have been a really close game, not only was there that miss, but remember right after that, there was a chance to get the ball back again with about 2 minutes to go. And then Cahoon ends up jumping offside on that punt, and Saskatchewan takes full advantage and ends up coming down the field and draining the clock.
And I thought that was a terrible PI call too.
Yeah, that was.
Come on.
I know.
Terrible. I don't know what those refs were. Those refs were all low. I mean, the Argos took too many penalties, and we can talk about that, 12. But I thought, first of all, some of those piling on the quarterback penalties were like, yeah, okay. Like on the broadcast, you're like, oh, but I mean, like I've watched football my whole life, and that's never been a flag.
I think it's a situation now where, like, you're right, but they were consistent. They called one when
after
Arbuckle
the
was
first
piled
one,
on.
you've got to dial it back.
But I think that's one of those things where the league's got to be looking around. And they're like, well, Bo Levi Mitchell's got a broken leg. Trevor Harris is out for 6 weeks. We've got 2 quarterbacks in BC and Ottawa that are playing with half an arm. You've got both Hamilton quarterbacks are out. Cody Fajardo is recovering from a concussion. Like, let's not let anybody touch the quarterbacks in this game. That seems to have been like a memo sent out.
But usually that's like a preseason memo, and they send out video. I mean, I thought it was tough on the Argos for that to be like a mid-season, oh, we're going to call this a roughing penalty now. And you're like, well, that's never been a penalty before. That sort of like on that one, when he dove forward, he's not even giving himself up. Like I thought that was a garbage call. Like he's not giving himself up.
The one.
If he's diving forward, then he should give it. They have a mechanism to not be hit.
You're talking about the Trevor Hoyt one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I had trouble with that too because again, he's diving for yardage.
They smashed his head, and then concussion protocol. He grabbed his head again. They're like, oh, he must be telling us his head is okay, because that's the traditional sign of I don't have a concussion again. Grabbing your head directly after contact. It's only in every single concussion manual as a primary sign of concussion.
Yeah, there were actually a couple that Fajardo exhibited today after hard hits.
Yeah, it's like number one sign you look for: grabs head.
Yeah, in any amateur league, he would have been ruled out of the game immediately. But I don't know what to say about the CFL concussion protocol. We've talked about it before, but it's mind-boggling.
The announcer's talking about like, oh, he got tested and he's fine. Like, there's no test. You didn't take a test. What, they're acting like, anyways. It
doesn't exist. Yeah, I know.
It's very frustrating, the attitude that, he's had lots of concussions, so he knows when he has a bad one. That was a report on the TV. Like, oh, okay. Well, that's one way of framing it.
I know, and we know it doesn't work like that, and it is frustrating, and it's upsetting because it's unsafe, and we're getting off topic here because we're not talking about the Argos or the Rough Riders. It's not about that. It's just that there needs to be a better and a more consistent protocol, and pretty much every league, but this has been a pretty rough one for the CFL, I think, with this Cody Fajardo incident specifically.
Yeah, I thought the refs were pretty tough. I know the Argos were undisciplined, but I thought at least 3 of those penalties were pretty tough takes.
Let's move on to the second half. Things look like they were getting better for the Argos. Again, that happened a lot tonight. But Arbuckle came out, and that first drive of the third quarter, he was amazing. So he's just flying the ball downfield. That's where you end up with that huge play to Rogers. He makes another nice pass to Daniels. I think another play to Chandler Worthy in there too, if I'm not incorrect. And he ends up getting the ball into the end zone on a just excellent play fake. And Daniels is wide open in the end zone for the touchdown. So I have an issue with going for 2 at that stage. So mathematically, I know what Coach Dinwiddie is trying to do there. So they scored the touchdown. It's now 18-9. And what Coach Dinwiddie is thinking is if I go for 2, that makes it 18-11, and now I'm down 7. But this is absolutely the wrong time to go for 2. In my mind, the rule is, and this is always the way I play it every single time, is you only go for 2 when it's the last touchdown you're scoring. That's the only time you go for 2. Unless you're like, if you're down 16, obviously, and it's late in the game, then yes, you have to go for 2 on both touchdowns that you score. But in that scenario, so much is going to happen. It was early third quarter. There's so much that goes on, especially in the CFL with single points. You're going to end up chasing that later. It just made no sense to me. And so I hated that play call going for 2. And again, it took the wind out of the sails. The Argos had all the momentum, that amazing touchdown drive. And then they're like, we're still in single digits. We got 9 points.
Yeah. I mean, we're on the same page on that. I mean, I think there should be a chart. I think it's pretty accepted knowledge that don't chase your 2 points in Canadian football. And because you kick the extra point, and now you're within 1 score, and that's just mentally a big deal. So that was, I mean, I don't think it made a difference in the game, but wouldn't have been.
It didn't, but it felt like it might at that point.
Yeah, I wasn't crazy about that call.
You don't need a chart; you just need a checklist, and it goes like this: should I go for a 2-point conversion? Question 1: is it the fourth quarter? And if the answer is no, then no, you should not go for 2 points.
Don't chase early.
So nothing else good happened for pretty much not the rest of the game, but the third quarter, man. Like, so Enoch Mwamba goes out, Judge is out. All the linebackers are just dropping like flies. And then Daniels drops that potential touchdown pass that just goes off his hands. So that was basically the rest of the third quarter after what was such a promising start to the second half with that great drive. And from that 2-point conversion onwards, it was just misery. And then transitioning into the fourth, there was more life again. You had that touchdown pass to Rogers, another really nice drive that Arbuckle put together. And then we end up with more drops on deep balls. and it just continued to spiral. And then the fourth quarter got out of control. And we had perhaps the worst defensive play of the day in that fourth quarter. And I'm not going to go over that right now because I'm definitely going to be bringing that one up when we get to our worst play of the day in just a moment. Let's take a quick look at some of the stats that we had. Like you said, Arbuckle had a great game. Now he ends up 22 of 33, which is only 66% completion, but a lot of those incompletions were late, just like that interception was late. It's garbage time. The Saskatchewan's dropping everyone into coverage. I'm not going to hold those incompletions or that interception against him, but he threw for over 300 yards. He had a long of 59, which is so nice to see. Made some really nice decisions. As I said, I think he only missed one decision all day. And I think lost in this too is that the Argos ran the ball really well. They actually averaged more yards per carry than Saskatchewan did. On designed runs, it was even less close. On designed runs, the Argos were averaging 7 yards a carry. That was brought down a little bit by Nick Arbuckle's scrambles, but even then, it was 6 yards a carry. So they were running the ball well, but unfortunately, when you get behind like that, especially late, you can't use that run game anymore. And it's so crucial for the Argos offense because everything is built off of RPOs and play action. And if you can't convince the defense that you're actually going to be running the football, then so much of the rest of your passing game just doesn't work.
Yeah, again, there's like basically 3 plays. You have the 2 red zone plays, the offside on the punt, and a couple of drop passes. And the Argos are right there. I mean, they win that game. The offense played well. The defense played well, but somehow they never felt in the game. It was such a weird game.
And 8 different receivers involved. The highlights there: Eric Rogers, 97 yards and a touchdown. Ricky Collins Jr. had 91 yards. Devers Daniels had a touchdown, 67 yards, 4 catches. A little bit more a quiet day from DJ Foster. He still had 4 catches, but only 17 yards on that. They were really keeping an eye on him. And then on the other side, I know their average wasn't quite as high as Toronto's rushing average, but William Powell just ran all over the Argonauts, 21 carries for 122 yards. And that just drained so much time and just wore down the defense.
Yeah, the defensive line, I think the injuries at the defensive line kind of shone through tonight. They were getting pushed around. The linebackers were, offensive line were getting a second level and washing those guys out. I mean, there was a lot of room for running. And hopefully Mwamba's back. I mean, geez, Cam looked like an Achilles.
Yeah, we don't know. And I asked Coach Dinwiddie after the game if he had an update on that, and he didn't have much. So Kem Judge was in a walking boot and with crutches. And so he said right on the spot, I doubt we're going to see him next week. But he didn't know anything else. He was going to go for some imaging. Mwamba, he wasn't even sure what had happened to Mwamba. He hadn't had a chance to even assess that. So who knows? But hopefully he can get back soon. I did ask Dexter McCoyle about that, and he seemed to be hoping that Mwamba could recover and get back. But nobody knows anything at this point. So it's just a guess.
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't know. It's frustrating to see a team not continue to improve each week, but I think they're going to be right there. They're going to be probably 8-6, and we'll be a team that could surprise in the playoffs, but will probably have to go on the road.
Probably, and it is looking a bit like that at this point. They just can't. They're just not consistent enough, and have not shown the ability to win on the road. And so,
and they just have not gotten lucky with injuries. You need a year where you stay pretty healthy, and that just hasn't been the case. Where we just haven't been able to put out the squad that we had on paper in camp.
And hopefully the nice thing is there's enough time for guys to start coming back. The other nice thing is that generally the team has been able to rebound. Actually, every single time the team has been able to rebound from games like this. And Montreal's coming up, and that's a big game.
And they're a good team. They're not a great team, but they're a good team. They were in this game tonight. I mean,
as badly as they were playing, they were in it. You're right.
God knows how many games we watched in 2019, except for when they played Ottawa, where it was just JV versus the senior team, and
I remember
they were right there. So I mean, give them that.
in 2019 sitting down to do the post-game podcast that was in BC, so 10 o'clock start, and it was 55-0 late fourth quarter. And I was looking through my notes. I'm like, what am I going to talk about in this game? And, fortunately, we're not doing anything like that this year. Like, it's a fun team to watch, and they are really good at times.
And I think it's a tribute to them that our expectations are so high because they're capable of it. So where, it's that old line about, never worry when the coach yells at you, just worry when the coach stops yelling at you. So we feel they can be great, which is why I think, we kind of are tough on them sometimes, but that's because, we feel that there's a gear that they haven't hit yet. At moments they have, right, through a couple of times in the Hamilton game, a couple of times in the Winnipeg game where you're like, wow, like this team has it. Great defense, great offense. Just isn't quite clicking yet, but I think Montreal can be a cure for that.
Offensive player of the game, for me, it's Nick Arbuckle. I already went over his stats, and like I said, I think it's his best game as an Argo. He's hands down the best offensive player for the Argos today. How did you see it?
Yeah, I agree. I thought I was a little less excited about him than you because he had the 2 fumbles. You know what? I thought Chandler Worthy showed a little something on that end around.
He did. Well, he's got so much speed. And wasn't it nice to see him returning kicks and punts too?
Yeah. Look, he's better. He's not quite as twitchy as I want. But
he runs a 4.2.
But he's better. Well, I don't know what to tell you. I'm just saying what I see. Like, he's better. He's better. Yeah, like he's better than Braverman. I'm happy with him as the returner. I think that he's a better baseline returner, and he looks like he could potentially break one. So,
I want to see him out there taking some routes too.
I'm just bitter about my guy being cut. But Worthy looks like he could be something back there. I think so. I mean, I think Rogers had some great plays, also had some drops. I'll give it to Arbuckle, but stop fumbling the ball.
Where are you going for your defensive player of the game?
You know what? I went back and forth on this. I don't always pick defensive backs, although that seems to be a bit of a bias. But I'm going to go with Butler. I thought the return of Butler, he looked great. Maybe he was the guy on one of the Saskatchewan touchdowns, maybe not. I'm not privy to the play call. But I thought he looked good at there. I thought he made some nice plays. He had the pick. I almost went with Peters. I think he's been really the discovery of the year for me. I think he's a starter. He's a player. I wasn't so sure at the beginning of the year, but I think he has real talent. I think Peters can be an all-star.
Yeah, I agree. And how about Tristan Decoux as well on the other side?
Yeah,
like both of these guys.
I think both those guys could be all-stars.
Yeah, and they weren't even supposed to be playing. So it's pretty awesome that they both look so good. But I think you're right. Like Creston Butler, he played really well. I'm going to go a different direction. I'm going to go with Dexter McCoyle. He had 8 tackles. He was all over the place, and he just had to do so much himself once they lost Mwamba and Judge. And he's basically stepping in there to play Mac, and it was all on him. And he played really well. He still, he had a penalty. He had a couple of missed tackles, but everybody on the defense did. I think you can kind of cancel some of those out with his outstanding play. So he's my defensive player of the game.
Yeah, he's been tremendous. He's been everything we hoped he would be. Poor Hoyt. That's a big time jump to be like, okay, now you're the middle linebacker. So look, if Kassar can get back on the field, it looks like there's going to be some reps.
Yeah, it could be. And, we haven't had an update from him in a while, so we'll see what happens in practice this week. Let's go into best play and worst play of the game. I think I know what your worst play is going to be, and it's probably going to be mine. What was your best play of the game? Maybe I'll go first with this one.
Yeah, you go first.
So best play of the game for me was the deep pass to Rogers. We've been begging for these all year. It was such a nice play from Arbuckle. He buys time, scrambles out, launches one 59 yards in the air, downfield to Rogers. It's a perfect throw. He's found him in space. Rogers gets all the way down to the 5-yard line. Now, everything fell apart after that, but at the moment, that was a huge play. And a play like that does wonders because it opens up space. Because Arbuckle was facing that issue that we were talking about where everything was underneath, everything was short. You only need a few connections like that, and especially from guys that haven't really gone on a lot of deep routes before either. And I asked Rogers that after the game. I asked him, were you downfield a lot more than usual? It seemed like it. And he said, yeah, there was a lot of play design for me deep, just in general, but for him specifically, he had corners and posts and diagonals and found himself way downfield, and that was one of those plays. It was a gorgeous pass. So that's my best play of the day. I just wish it resulted in a touchdown.
Yeah, I think just to be different or not to repeat, I really liked the Peters pass breakup in the first quarter, where it looked like, after the fumble, it looked like, maybe Saskatchewan was going to really put one on us. And
it was the flea flicker, right?
Yeah. And I thought that was a great pass. Because, I think if they convert there, I think that game spirals out of control. If they go up 14, the flea flicker, now they're just showing off. I think it probably gets chippy and it probably turns into a blowout. So I thought that pass breakup was really nice. That's a lot harder than it looks, like to especially these days with the way they throw flags.
Yeah.
I thought, he got really jobbed on a PI at the end of the half. And I thought that was a nice clean breakup and potentially, like a game-changing play. It didn't turn out to be that, but it had the potential to be.
And for worst play, I'm going to the Kean Schaefer-Baker touchdown late in the game. It's 2nd and 14. Saskatchewan basically settling for a field goal. They call it tunnel screen. And Schaefer-Baker broke about 15 tackles on his way. It felt like he was almost like embarrassed by the time he got to the end zone that all these guys were just sliding off of him. It was so awkward to watch. And just, again, that was another wind out of the sails moment because that really put it away. And I can't think of a worse play today. There were a few of them, but that to me was the worst play of the day. I got to think that's yours too.
Yeah, it was. It reminded me of that Hamilton touchdown.
To tie or to almost tie it.
Yeah, look, I think that the Argo defense is, well, look, we were down a lot of linebackers, so it's tough. I don't want to be too tough on them all, but and he caught a break because he ran right into one of his players who spun him off in a direction that he never would have been able to do on his own. So, some breaks went their way, but there was some bad tackling on that touchdown.
Well, that will just about do it for us on this episode of the X's and Argos podcast. We'll have a lot of stuff coming up this week, including JB's report card, which I'm eager to read. I'll have a film study piece. And of course, we'll be getting you set for a pretty pivotal, important game coming up, an East Division showdown with the Montreal Alouettes at BMO Field next Friday. So look out for all of that stuff. For JB, my name is Ben Grant saying so long, and may all your pre-snap reads be good ones. I'll see ya.
Go, Toronto Argos, go, go, go. Pull together, fight the fight.